My son said he wasn't expecting me for Christmas, so I canceled the mortgage payment plan. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. 3 days before Christmas, my son told me I wasn't welcome in his home. The home I paid for. The home I bought with 40 years of showing up. I had just finished wrapping gifts for grandchildren who wouldn't see them. And I was holding a phone that had just delivered the coldest words I'd ever heard from my own blood. Have you ever given everything to someone who made you feel like nothing? Have you ever packed a suitcase for a trip you'd never take? Every year, thousands of parents hand over their life savings to help their children buy homes. And every year, some of those parents learn the hardest lesson. Love doesn't guarantee loyalty. What would you do if your own child told you to stay away from the house you bought them? Would you cry? Would you beg? Or would you do what I did? If you've ever trusted someone with everything and watched them treat it like nothing, stay with me. This story isn't about a father falling apart. It's about a father waking up. Subscribe now, because what I did next, you won't see it coming. My name is Harold Whitmore. I'm 74 years old. I spent 40 years carrying mail through rain, snow, and summer heat in Columbus, Ohio. I raised a son, I buried a wife, and I thought I knew what family meant. I was wrong. But I learned. And by the time you finish this story, you'll learn too. December 22nd, 2023. The kitchen clock read 4:47 inches the afternoon. I remember because I was watching it, counting the seconds between each tick, trying to make sense of what my son had just said. We're not expecting you this year, Dad. That's what Derek told me, just like that, like he was canceling a dentist appointment. My suitcase was already by the front door. Blue, medium-sized, the same one Eleanor and I took to Florida in 2018. I'd packed it 2 days early because I was excited. 74 years old, and still getting excited about Christmas like a kid. The presents were stacked on the dining table, a remote control car for James, a jewelry-making kit for Emma, a cashmere sweater for Derek because he'd mentioned on our last call that Phoenix winters were colder than he expected, and a candle set for Megan, even though Eleanor always said that woman didn't deserve a gift bag, let alone a candle. Steam rose from the coffee I'd poured 20 minutes ago. I hadn't taken a single sip. Dad, you still there? Derek's voice came through the phone, flat and practiced. I could hear Megan in the background. Just tell him, Derek, rip off the Band-Aid. Rip off the Band-Aid. Like I was something to be removed, something in the way. I'm here, I said. My voice didn't shake. I made sure of that. It's just Megan thinks it's better if we do our own thing this year. The kids are older now. They want to do Christmas morning without all the extra. He didn't finish that sentence. He didn't have to. Without all the extra. That's what I was. Extra. I looked at the presents on the table. The wrapping paper had little reindeer on it. I'd spent an hour getting the corners just right because Emma once told me she liked when presents looked fancy. All right, I said. All right? Derek sounded surprised. Maybe he expected me to argue, to beg. If that's what you want, son. It's not about what I want, Dad. It's complicated. Complicated. I'd heard that word before. Derek used it when his business failed. He used it when he asked me for help buying the house. He used it every time he needed something, but didn't want to say please. I understand, I told him. And I did. I understood more than he knew. Okay. Good. So, we'll talk after the holidays, yeah? Sure, Derek, after the holidays. I hung up first. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of ending the call. The kitchen was quiet. The kind of quiet that fills up a house when someone who used to be there isn't anymore. Eleanor had been gone 3 years now, but I still heard her voice sometimes. In the creak of the floorboards, in the way the wind pushed through the gap in the back door she always meant to fix. Right then, I heard her say, "What are you going to do about it, Harold?" Good question. I sat there for 2 hours. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just looked at the presents and thought about all the years I'd spent showing up. 40 years at the Postal Service. Rain, snow, summer heat that made the mail truck feel like an oven. I never called in sick. I never complained. I showed up because that's what a man does. That's what a father does. When Derek was 10, I coached his Little League team. When he was 16, I taught him to drive in the parking lot of the Methodist Church on Sundays when it was empty. When he was 22 and fresh out of college with no job and no plan, I let him live in my basement for 2 years, without asking for a dime. And when he was 36 with bad credit, a pregnant wife, and a dream of owning a home he couldn't afford, I emptied my retirement account and wrote a check for $280,000. Because that's what fathers do. We show up, we sacrifice, we believe in our children even when the math doesn't make sense. But sitting in that kitchen, with my coffee going cold and my suitcase packed for a trip I'd never take, I started to wonder, when does sacrifice become stupidity? I got up from the table. My knees popped the way they always did now. I walked to the hallway, past the photos on the wall. Derek at his high school graduation. Derek and Megan at their wedding. Derek holding baby Emma in the hospital. In every photo, I was somewhere nearby, standing proud, smiling like I'd won the lottery. I stopped at the filing cabinet in my home office. Eleanor's desk was still in the corner, untouched. Her reading glasses were still sitting on top of a book she never finished. I opened the top drawer and pulled out a folder I hadn't touched in 4 years. Inside was the deed to a house at 4721 Copper Ridge Drive, Phoenix, Arizona. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. A backyard with a lemon tree that Derek said the kids loved. The deed was in my name, Harold J. Whitmore. Right there, printed in black ink. Eleanor made me do it that way. She was dying when we closed on the house, but her mind was sharp as ever. She grabbed my hand and said, "Keep your name on that deed, Harold, just in case." I asked her, "Just in case of what?" She looked at me the way she always did when I was being naive. "Just in case your son forgets who paid for his life." I thought she was being harsh. I told her Derek would never do something like that. He loved me. He was grateful. He said so himself when I handed him the keys. But Eleanor knew. Somehow, she always knew. I held that deed in my hands and read my name out loud. It felt strange, like meeting an old friend I'd forgotten about. For the first time since Eleanor died, I smiled. Not a happy smile, a different kind. The kind that comes when you realize you're not as helpless as everyone thinks. I didn't call Derek back. I didn't book a return flight. I didn't do anything that night except sit in my chair, hold that deed, and think. By morning, I had a plan. Have you ever held a piece of paper that changed everything? Drop deed in the comments if you know exactly what I'm talking about. In 2019, I didn't just buy my son a house, I bought him a future. I just didn't realize I wasn't included in it. Let me take you back. It was March. The snow in Columbus was finally starting to melt. I was sitting at my kitchen table, same spot as always, when Derek called. His voice was different that day. Tight, embarrassed. The voice of a man who needed something but didn't want to ask. "Dad, I don't know who else to call." He told me everything. His business had failed, some kind of marketing company he'd started with a college friend. The friend ran off with the money. Derek was left with debt and a credit score that looked like a bad bowling game. Megan was pregnant with their second child. James was coming in 4 months. They were renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Phoenix that was too small and too expensive. Every month, they fell further behind. "We'll never get approved for a mortgage," Derek said. "Not with my credit, and Megan can't work much longer." "I don't know what to do, Dad." "I really don't." I listened. I didn't interrupt. That's something Eleanor taught me. Let people finish before you speak. When he was done, I asked one question. "How much do you need?" The number was $280,000. A 4-bedroom house in a suburb outside Phoenix. Good schools, safe neighborhood, room for the kids to grow. I had $312,000 in my retirement account. 40 years of saving, 40 years of skipping vacations, and driving used cars, and putting a little bit away every paycheck. Eleanor was in the hospital by then. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor said she had maybe 6 months. I drove to see her that afternoon. Told her what Derek asked for. Told her I wanted to help. She squeezed my hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were strong, and she said, "Do it, but do it smart." That's when she made me promise to keep my name on the deed, set up a private mortgage, let Derek make payments directly to me instead of a bank. No interest, no credit check, just father and son. "And if he ever stops paying," Eleanor said, "you'll still have the house." I kissed her forehead and told her she worried too much. She smiled, sad and knowing. One of us has to. 2 weeks later, I wrote the check. $280,000. The biggest number I'd ever seen next to my signature. My hand was steady because I believed in my son. We flew to Phoenix for the closing. Derek cried when he got the keys. Actually cried. He hugged me right there in the title company office and said, "I'll never forget this, Dad." Never. Megan hugged me too. She smelled like expensive perfume. She said all the right things. "Thank you so much. You're the best father-in-law anyone could ask for." But her eyes were already looking past me, toward the house, toward the future I'd just bought her. Eleanor was too sick to travel, so I video called her from the driveway. Derek held Emma up to the camera. She was 3 years old, all curly hair and big eyes, and Eleanor waved at her granddaughter from a hospital bed in Ohio. "It's beautiful, Harold," she said. "You did good." 2 months later, Eleanor was gone, and I was alone. But not completely, because Derek called every month when he made his payment, $1,800. Right on time. He'd ask about my health, tell me about the kids, promise that I could visit any time. For 4 years, he never missed a payment. For 4 years, I believed I had done something beautiful. I didn't need a yacht. I didn't need a vacation home. I needed to know my son and his children had roots. That was my retirement. That was my legacy. At least, that's what I told myself. Would you have kept your name on that deed? Or trusted your child completely? Tell me below. Because here's what I didn't know in 2019. Here's what took me 4 years to discover. While I was sitting alone in Columbus, missing my wife and waiting for phone calls from Phoenix, Derek was telling people a different story. He was telling neighbors and real estate agents that his father was barely involved, that the house was practically his, that it was only a matter of time before the paperwork caught up. And Megan was counting the days until I died. For 4 years, Derek never missed a payment. For 4 years, I believed I had done something beautiful, and then I got an email I was never supposed to see. Yolanda Vance was 26 years old, fresh out of paralegal school, and she found what my own son had been hiding for 2 years. 6 months before that Christmas phone call, I hired Yolanda to help me get my affairs in order. Estate paperwork, will updates, the kind of things a man starts thinking about when he's 74 and lives alone. She came recommended by my accountant. Young, sharp, hungry to prove herself. She wore glasses that were too big for her face, and took notes on everything. I liked her. She reminded me of Eleanor, when we first met, organized, no nonsense. The kind of person who noticed details other people missed. Her first task was simple. Organize all my property documents. The house in Columbus. The house in Phoenix. Just pull the records, I told her. Make sure everything's in order. She did more than that. Yolanda ran county record checks on both properties. Standard procedure, she said. Just to make sure there were no liens or surprises. That's when she found the first problem. She came to my house on a Tuesday afternoon, sat across from me in my home office, laptop open, papers in her hand. She had a look on her face I didn't understand yet. "Mr. Whitmore, I found something I think you should see." She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a neighborhood association form from the Phoenix HOA. Derek had filled it out the previous year. Under property owner, he'd written his own name. Under relationship to deed holder, he'd written primary resident, future owner. Future owner. I read those 2 words 3 times. My coffee went cold on the desk. "There's more," Yolanda said. She was hesitating now, like she wasn't sure if she should continue. "Show me." She pulled up another document. Notes from a real estate agent in Phoenix, someone named Linda Castellano. According to her records, Derek had contacted her 6 months ago, asking about transfer of ownership timelines. He'd told her his elderly father was barely involved in the property anymore. Said he was handling all the maintenance and payments. Said it was basically his house at this point. Basically his house. I built that boy. I taught him to ride a bike. I taught him to tie a necktie. I showed him how to shake a man's hand and look him in the eye. And here he was, telling strangers I was barely involved. In a house I paid for with 40 years of my life. My hands shook as I read those notes, not from anger. From something worse, something that felt like the floor disappearing beneath my feet. Yolanda watched me carefully. "Mr. Whitmore, do you want me to stop?" "No." I kept my voice even. "Keep going. I want to see everything." Most parents never check the records. They trust, they assume, and then they lose everything. If you're watching this and you've helped a family member buy a home, don't look away. Subscribe now, because the next detail I found, it nearly put me in the hospital. Yolanda closed the laptop and looked at me with something in her eyes that might have been pity. Or maybe respect. I couldn't tell. There's one more thing, she said. I found emails. Emails? Derek forwarded something to an old email account. An account that still has your name on it. I don't think he realized you still had access. I remembered that account. A joint family email Eleanor set up years ago for sharing photos and schedules. I hadn't logged into it in over a year. What kind of emails? I asked. Yolanda took a breath. The kind you're going to want to read sitting down. I was already sitting. But I understood what she meant. Yolanda said there was more. She'd found emails. Emails Derek had accidentally forwarded to an old account, an account that still had my name on it. Have you ever found something you were never meant to see? Type found if you know that feeling. My daughter-in-law wrote, "We just have to wait him out. He's 74. How much longer can it be?" Yolanda pulled up the email chain on her laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim light of my office. Outside, the sun was setting, but I'd forgotten about time. The first email was from Megan to Derek, dated 14 months ago. Subject line, "House stuff, private." I read it out loud, because I needed to hear the words to believe them. "Your dad's not going to live forever. Once he's gone, we challenge the deed. Say he wasn't mentally fit when he bought it. Who's going to argue? He'll be dead." I stopped reading. My chest felt tight, like someone was standing on it. Yolanda didn't say anything. She just sat there, still as stone, letting me take it in. I scrolled down to Derek's reply. "Just keep being nice to him on the phone. A few more years, tops. Then this is officially ours. A few more years, tops." That's how my son measured my life, in years. Like I was a countdown clock. Like every birthday was just one step closer to their payday. There was a third email, more recent, just 3 weeks before that Christmas phone call. "Megan again. Tell him Christmas is family only this year. I don't want him here asking questions. Family only. I was his family. His father. The man who raised him, fed him, taught him, saved him. And now I wasn't family enough to spend Christmas in a house I bought with my own hands." I read those emails 3 times. Then I asked Yolanda to print them. The printer hummed and clicked. Pages slid out, warm from the machine. I held them in my hands, evidence of my son's betrayal, black ink on white paper. My vision blurred, not from tears, from something else. Shock, maybe, or the kind of hurt that doesn't have a name. I thought about the Christmas gifts by my door. The plane ticket I'd already bought. The sweater I'd picked out for Derek because he mentioned he was cold last winter. And I thought about Eleanor, my wife, my partner for 46 years. She never trusted Megan, not from the first day Derek brought her home. Eleanor told me once, "That woman counts everything, Harold. Even your breaths." I didn't listen. I thought she was being harsh, protective, the way mothers are about their sons. But Eleanor saw what I refused to see. She knew Megan was adding up numbers in her head every time she looked at me, calculating how much I was worth, how long I had left. Derek thought his father would never find out. He thought the old man would just fade away quietly. He was wrong. If you've ever been underestimated, keep watching. And subscribe, because what I did next is something most people only dream about. I didn't call Derek that night. I didn't confront him. I didn't yell or cry or ask him how he could do this to me. Instead, I sat at Eleanor's desk. I opened her old laptop, the one I couldn't bring myself to throw away, and I searched for one thing. Elder law attorney, Phoenix, Arizona. The results loaded. Names, phone numbers, reviews. People who spent their careers helping parents like me. Parents who trusted too much. Parents who learned the hard way that love doesn't protect you from the people you love. I found a name that stood out. Margaret Chen, 20 years of experience. Specialized in property disputes and elder financial protection. 5 stars, 112 reviews. I wrote down her number. By morning, I had a plan, and for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt since Eleanor died. Hope, not the soft kind, the sharp kind, the kind that comes with teeth. I didn't call my son that night. I didn't confront him. I picked up my phone and searched for one thing. Elder Law Attorney, Phoenix, Arizona. By morning, I had a name and a plan. What would you have done? Confronted them immediately, or waited? Tell me your move in the comments. The attorney's name was Margaret Chen. She'd spent 20 years watching families tear themselves apart over property. But she told me later she'd never seen a father this calm. I flew to Phoenix on a Thursday. Didn't tell Derek. Didn't tell anyone except Yolanda, who helped me book the flight. Margaret's office was downtown, 12th floor, glass walls, clean lines, the kind of place where serious things happen. The receptionist offered me water. I took it just to have something to hold. Margaret came out to greet me herself. She was smaller than I expected. Maybe 50 years old. Silver streaks in her black hair. Handshake firm enough to mean business. "Mr. Whitmore, come in." Her office smelled like leather and paper. Legal books lined one wall. The desk was glass. Neat. Nothing out of place. Phoenix sunlight poured through the windows, bright enough to make me squint. I sat across from her and put the folder on the desk. Everything Yolanda had found, the county records, the real estate inquiry, the emails. Margaret read in silence. Her face didn't change. No shock, no disgust. Just focus, like a doctor reading test results she'd seen before. When she finished, she set the papers down and looked at me. "Mr. Whitmore, I need to ask you something directly." "Go ahead. What do you want out of this?" I'd thought about that question the whole flight. 40,000 feet in the air, nothing but clouds and time to think. "I want my son to understand that actions have weight," I said. "I want him to know that you can't plan to rob a man while smiling at his Christmas card." Margaret nodded slowly. "You don't want revenge?" "I want justice. There's a difference." She almost smiled. "Almost. Most parents in your position wait too long," she said. "They hope things will change. They tell themselves their child didn't mean it. By the time they act, they've lost everything. I'm not most parents. I can see that." She pulled out a legal pad and clicked her pen. The sound was small but precise. "Here's your situation. The deed is in your name. Legally, you own that house. Derek's payments don't constitute ownership, they constitute rent, or at best, an informal loan repayment. He has no claim." "What about the emails? The plan to challenge the deed after I die?" "Intent to commit fraud isn't the same as committing fraud. But it gives us leverage. Combined with his statements to the real estate agent and his false claims to the HOA, we have a pattern of behavior. He's been positioning himself as the owner for years. That's not an accident." She tapped the pen against her notepad. "They're betting you'll die before you act. They're betting you love them too much to fight." I felt the words land like a punch to the chest. Because she was right. That's exactly what they were counting on. The soft, sad old man who'd rather lose everything than hurt his son. "I do love them," I said. "That's why I'm doing this right." Margaret set the pen down. "Here are your options. 1. Demand payment, in full. Derek owes you $211,000, the remaining balance of the original purchase price, minus the payments he's already made. If he can't pay, you foreclose. And if he can pay, then you get your money back, and he keeps the house. But based on what I've seen, I doubt he has that kind of cash." "What else?" 2. File a lien against the property. That blocks any sale, any refinance, any equity line. Derek won't be able to touch that house without your permission. And 3. You sell the house yourself. It's in your name. You have every legal right. You'd need to give proper notice, but within 90 days, you could put it on the market." I sat with those options. Each one was a door, and behind each door was a different kind of pain. "What would you recommend?" Margaret leaned back in her chair. "Start with the lien. It protects your interest without making the first move public. Then file a notice of default on the informal mortgage agreement. Give Derek a chance to respond. See what he does when he realizes you're not the helpless old man he thinks you are." I nodded. "And the emails?" "We keep those in reserve. If Derek fights back, we show the court that he's been planning to challenge your competency for years. That'll sink any argument he tries to make." I thought about Derek's face when he got the papers. The confusion, the fear, the moment he realized his father was awake. I didn't want to destroy my son. I wanted him to understand. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he'd done. Eleanor would have wanted this. She'd have said, "Don't be a fool twice." "Harold." "Do it," I said. "File the lien. Send the notice." Margaret didn't hesitate. She pulled out the forms, had me sign in 3 places, and promised to have everything filed by the end of the day. Harold had 90 days to act before Derek's next move. If you wait until tomorrow, you might forget this story. But the lesson stays. Subscribe now so the next time I show you how to protect yourself, you won't miss it. As I walked out of Margaret's office, she called after me, "Mr. Whitmore, one more thing." I turned. "You're doing the right thing. Most people don't have the courage." I thought about Eleanor, about the life we built together, about everything I stood to lose and everything I refused to give away. "Courage isn't the word I'd use," I said. "Survival, that's more like it." Margaret filed the first document that afternoon, a formal notice of default on the private mortgage. Derek would receive it in 7 days. But I wasn't done. There was one more thing. I needed a witness who could prove Derek knew exactly what he was doing. Would you have told Derek what was coming? Or let the paperwork speak for itself? Drop paperwork if you believe in letting the documents do the talking. His name was Carl Dominguez. He'd been Derek's neighbor for 3 years, and he remembered everything. Margaret suggested I find people who could back up what Yolanda discovered. Neighbors, friends, anyone who heard Derek talk about the house, she said. The more witnesses, the stronger your case. So I stayed in Phoenix an extra day, rented a car, drove to Copper Ridge Drive without telling Derek I was anywhere near Arizona. It felt strange, parking down the street from the house I paid for. The lemon tree in the backyard had grown taller. The front lawn was trimmed neat. A new mailbox stood at the end of the driveway, one of those fancy ones with a little roof over it. I didn't go to Derek's door, not yet. Instead, I walked 3 houses down and knocked on the door of number 4715. A dog barked inside. Then footsteps. Then a man's face appeared through the screen door, tanned, gray beard, suspicious eyes. "Can I help you?" "My name is Harold Whitmore. I'm Derek's father, the one who owns the house he lives in." The man studied me for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or curiosity. "Carl Dominguez," he said. "Come on in." His kitchen smelled like coffee and bacon grease. The air conditioning hummed against the Arizona heat. Carl poured me a cup without asking and sat across from me at a small wooden table. "I know who you are," he said. "Derek used to have pictures of you in the house, back when he first moved in." "Used to? Took them down about a year ago. Said he was redecorating." Carl shook his head. "Funny thing to redecorate." I pulled out a small notepad, the same one I used to carry on my mail route, back when I needed to write down forwarding addresses and package notes. "I need to ask you some questions, Carl. About things Derek might have said. About the house. About me." Carl leaned back in his chair. His eyes were steady, honest. "Your son told me you were senile." The word hit me like a slap. Senile. I set my coffee down slowly. "He said what?" "Told me you'd signed the house over years ago but forgot. Said you had memory problems. Said he was just waiting for the paperwork to catch up with reality." I thought about my 40 years at the Postal Service. Memorizing routes, zip codes, forwarding addresses. I could still recite every street in my old district, every shortcut, every dog that barked, and every porch that creaked. Senile. That's what my son told strangers about me. A confused old man waiting to die. "There's more," Carl said. He wasn't enjoying this, I could tell. But he wasn't going to sugarcoat it either. "Megan spoke at the HOA meeting last spring. Said she was the primary decision-maker for the property. Said you weren't involved in anything. And people believed her? Why wouldn't they? She's there every day. You're in Ohio. Nobody knew any different." I wrote it all down. Every word. My hand didn't shake this time. It was steady, controlled. "Carl, would you be willing to put this in writing? A formal statement?" He didn't hesitate. "Whatever you need." I knew something was off the first time Derek talked about you that way. A man who speaks about his father like that? That's not right. He got up and refilled my coffee without asking. "You seem like a decent man, Harold. Whatever happened between you and your son, I hope you get it sorted. But if you're asking me to tell the truth, I'll tell it. That's just how I was raised." We spent the next hour going over details, dates, conversations, things Carl overheard at block parties and barbecues. By the time I was done, I had 3 pages of notes and a witness who was willing to sign his name to every word. Carl walked me to the door. The Arizona sun was starting to set, painting the sky orange and pink. "One more thing," he said. I turned. "You know they're planning to refinance, right?" My stomach dropped. "What?" Megan was bragging about it at the block party last month. Said they were going to pull equity out of the house. Said they'd have the cash by spring. I stood there on Carl's porch, the desert wind blowing warm against my face. They weren't just waiting for me to die, they were already spending money they didn't have, money that didn't exist, money they planned to steal from a house that wasn't theirs. Carl signed his statement that evening. But before I left, his words echoed in my head. They'd have the cash by spring. Spring was 4 months away. And I had work to do. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were already spending money they didn't have. Type refinance if you see where this is going. Margaret pulled up the county records and went quiet. Then she said, "They've already started." I was back in her office the next morning. Same glass desk, same Phoenix sunlight, but the mood was different now, heavier. Margaret's dual monitors glowed with spreadsheets and legal documents. She'd been digging deeper into the property records, following the trail Carl had pointed me toward. "What did you find?" I asked. She turned one of the monitors toward me. 3 weeks ago, Derek filed an application for a home equity line of credit. He's trying to borrow against the house. I leaned closer. The document was filled with numbers and legal terms, but one line stood out like a flashing red light. Under property owner, Derek had written his own name. Under ownership status, he'd written, "Sole owner pending estate transfer." "That's a lie," I said. "There's no estate transfer. I'm not dead." "I know." Margaret's voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "This isn't just a family dispute anymore, Harold. This is mortgage fraud." Derek claimed ownership of a property he doesn't own to secure a loan. If this application goes through, it's a federal issue. I stared at the screen. The words blurred together. My son was trying to steal my house, not after I died. Now, while I was still breathing. What are my options? Margaret pulled up another window. "We can report the fraud immediately. That stops the loan application and probably triggers a criminal investigation." Probably? Banks don't like being lied to. Neither does the FBI. I thought about Derek in handcuffs. Derek in a courtroom. Derek explaining to Emma and James why their father was going to prison. What's the other option? We use this as leverage. File the lien now. The moment any lender runs a title search, they'll see your claim on the property. The loan application dies on the spot. And Derek? Derek gets a wake-up call. He'll know you're onto him, but he won't know how much you know. It gives us time to build a stronger case while keeping the criminal option in reserve. I sat with those choices. Part of me wanted to burn everything down. Pick up the phone, call the FBI, let Derek face the full weight of what he'd done. But Eleanor's voice came back to me, soft and certain, like it always was when she was right. "Don't warn a thief you've changed the locks, Harold. Let him try the door. File the lien," I said. "Let them think they're getting away with it. When the notice of default arrives, they'll understand." Margaret nodded. She picked up her pen and started circling dates on a printout. The scratch of ink on paper sounded like a clock ticking down. "The lien will be recorded by end of day tomorrow. It'll show up on any title search within 48 hours. And then we wait. Derek's lender will run a final check before approving the loan. They'll find the lien. They'll call Derek and ask questions he can't answer." I looked at my reflection in Margaret's office window. An old man. White hair. Lines on my face from 74 years of living. But the eyes looking back at me weren't tired. They were awake, alert, ready. I thought about calling Derek right then, screaming at him, demanding to know how he could do this to me. But I didn't. Because screaming doesn't change anything. Paperwork does. Margaret filed the lien that afternoon. It would appear on any title search within 48 hours. The moment Derek's lender ran a final check, they'd see it. And then the phone calls would start. Have you ever watched someone dig their own grave without knowing it? That's what Derek was doing. And me? I was just waiting, with the shovel. The lien was 6 sentences long, but it carried the weight of 40 years. I flew back to Columbus and waited. The Christmas decorations were still up on my street. Lights blinking in windows, inflatable snowmen waving in the winter wind. My house was dark, No decorations, no lights. Just the suitcase by the door that I'd never unpacked, and the presents on the table that I'd never given. 3 days passed. Then my phone buzzed. Derek's name on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. I wanted him to wonder if I'd pick up at all. "Dad?" His voice was tight, trying to sound casual but failing. "Hey, I was just calling to check in, see how you're doing." "I'm fine, Derek. How are you?" A pause. The kind of pause that means someone is choosing their words carefully. "Good. Yeah, good. Listen, I got a weird call from the bank today. Something about a title issue on the house." "Did you?" "Yeah, they said there's some kind of lien." I figured it must be a mistake. I looked at the kitchen clock. The same clock that had been ticking when Derek told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas. "There's no mistake, Derek." Silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing. "What do you mean?" "I mean I filed a lien on the property. The property in my name. The one I paid for with money I saved for 40 years. Dad, I don't understand. Why would you? We should talk after Christmas, Derek. You said you wanted to do your own thing this year. So do your own thing. We'll sort this out later." "But Dad, the bank is asking questions. They want to know what's going on." "Tell them the truth. The house belongs to Harold Whitmore. Everything else is just details." Another pause. Longer this time. "Dad, what are you doing?" I didn't answer right away. I let the question hang there, heavy in the space between us. "I'm protecting what's mine, Derek. Something I should have done a long time ago." The call ended with Derek's voice cracking. He called me Dad 4 times in 3 minutes. He hadn't called me that since the day he asked for the money. Amazing how fast respect returns when you hold the paper. Right now, thousands of parents are in my position, but they don't know it yet. They trust, they hope, they wait. If you've ever helped someone buy a home, this is your sign to check the paperwork. Subscribe now. The next detail in this story could save you everything. I hung up the phone and looked at the gifts still stacked by my door. The remote control car for James, the jewelry kit for Emma, the cashmere sweater for Derek. I'd bought that sweater because my son mentioned he was cold. Now I wondered if he'd ever been warm at all. Christmas was 6 days away. And I had one more document to prepare. The formal demand letter. Derek would receive it on Christmas morning. Megan would be standing right next to him. Would you have waited until Christmas, or delivered the news sooner? Drop Christmas if you understand why I chose that day. The courier knocked at 9:47 a.m. Megan answered the door in her bathrobe. The children were still opening presents in the living room. Christmas morning in Phoenix. 72 degrees and sunny. The kind of weather that makes people from Ohio jealous. Derek and Megan's house was decorated nice. Lights on the roof, wreath on the door, one of those fancy doormats that says merry and bright. From the street, it looked like a happy home. Inside, wrapping paper covered the floor. Emma and James were tearing into their gifts. The tree was lit with white lights. Stockings hung over a fireplace that probably never got used. Then, the doorbell rang. Megan wasn't expecting anyone. She pulled her robe tight and opened the door to find a man in a brown uniform holding a clipboard. Certified delivery for Derek Whitmore. Megan signed without thinking. People do that on Christmas. They're distracted. They're trusting. The courier handed her a thick envelope and walked back to his van. Megan looked at the return address. Chen Law Group, Phoenix, Arizona. She opened it right there in the doorway. I know this because Derek told me later. He described how Megan's face went white, how her hands started shaking, how she read the first page 3 times before she said a word. Inside that envelope was everything. The formal notice of default. The demand for $211,000, due in 90 days. The notice of intent to sell the property if payment wasn't received. And attached to all of that, copies of the emails Yolanda found, Carl's witness statement, and the fraudulent lender application. The last page was handwritten. My handwriting. 6 words. You said you weren't expecting me. Back in Columbus, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee. The presents were still by the door. The suitcase was still packed. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel revenge. I felt something quieter. Something like clarity. I wasn't punishing my son. I was teaching him. The lesson Eleanor and I tried to give him his whole life. Actions have weight. Words have cost. And love doesn't mean letting someone destroy you. My phone rang within the hour. Dad. Derek's voice was different now. Not cold, not rehearsed, panicked. Dad, you can't do this. Merry Christmas, Derek. This isn't funny. The kids think about the kids. I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking about what kind of man their father is. And what kind of man I want them to become. We can work this out. Just give us more time. I closed my eyes. Saw Derek at 5 years old, riding the bike I taught him to ride. Saw him at 16, behind the wheel of my old Buick, learning to drive. Saw him at 36, crying in my arms when I handed him the keys to a house I'd paid for with my life savings. You had 4 years, Derek. You used them to plan my funeral. Silence. Dad, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did. And now we're here. What do you want me to do? I want you to think about what you've done. Really think about it. Then we'll talk. Derek hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in the silence of my kitchen and waited. Because I knew what was coming next. Megan. And Megan wouldn't beg. She'd threaten. Derek asked for more time. Would you have given it? Or held the line like me? Tell me in the comments. Megan's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You're going to regret this, Harold. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of father you really are. December 26th, the day after Christmas. I was eating leftover soup at my kitchen table when my phone rang. Not Derek this time. Megan. In all the years she'd been married to my son, Megan had never called me directly. Not once. Birthday cards were signed by Derek. Holiday calls were made by Derek. I was someone she tolerated, not someone she spoke to. Until now. Harold. She didn't say hello. Didn't ask how I was doing. Just my name, sharp and cold. We need to talk about this situation. I'm listening. The children are devastated. They're asking why Grandpa is trying to take their home away. Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family? I took a sip of my soup. Let the silence stretch out. Their home isn't going anywhere, Megan. The question is whether their parents can afford to stay in it. Don't play games with me. You know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. You mean you want me to go away quietly. You want me to forget what I found. You want me to pretend I don't know about the emails. Her breath caught on the other end of the line. Just for a second. Then she recovered. I don't know what you think you found, but you're making a mistake. Derek and I have witnesses. We have people who will testify that you haven't been in your right mind for years. You mean the witnesses who signed documents on a Sunday evening, when the notary office was closed? Silence. Margaret found those records, Megan. Timestamps. Building access logs. Your witnesses weren't where they said they were. More silence. I could hear her breathing, calculating. You're bluffing. Am I? Then go ahead. Take me to court. Show a judge those emails where you wrote about waiting for me to die. Show them the loan application where Derek claimed he was the sole owner of a house I paid for. Let's see how that goes. Her voice changed. Harder now. Desperate. You can't do this to us, Harold. I won't let you. It's already done. Then we'll fight. We'll get lawyers. We'll drag you through court until you're broke and broken. I looked at the kitchen clock. Same clock. Same tick. Same steady rhythm it had kept for 30 years. Megan, let me tell you something Eleanor told me before she died. She said, some people only hear you when you speak their language. I didn't understand what she meant back then. But I do now. What's that supposed to mean? It means you don't respond to kindness. You don't respond to family. You don't respond to love. The only thing you understand is consequences. I could hear her breathing hard, angry, scared. This isn't over, she said. No, it isn't. But the next move is yours. Make it count. She hung up without another word. I set my phone down and finished my soup. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was calm. I didn't enjoy that call. I didn't savor her fear. But I understood now what I was dealing with. Megan wasn't going to give up. She was going to fight with everything she had. And if she couldn't beat me with the truth, she'd try to beat me with lies. Megan thought she could scare me into backing down. She didn't know who she was dealing with. If you've ever faced someone who thought they could bully you into silence, keep watching and subscribe. Because the next chapter, that's when I stopped playing defense. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Official envelope. Legal firm in Phoenix I'd never heard of. Derek and Megan had hired a lawyer. A real one this time. The letter was 12 pages long. It accused me of elder abuse against my own son. It claimed I was using the property as financial coercion. It demanded I withdraw the lien and restore family harmony. And at the very end, it mentioned Emma and James. Our clients are prepared to seek a formal evaluation of Mr. Whitmore's fitness to maintain contact with his minor grandchildren. They were going to use my grandchildren as weapons. They were going to try to take away the only family I had left. I read that letter 3 times. Then I called Margaret. They want to fight, I said. Let's give them one. They brought lawyers into it. They made it about the children. What would you do next? Drop fight if you'd stand your ground. Their lawyer's letter was 12 pages long. My response was 3. But those 3 pages carried more weight than anything Derek had ever held in his hands. January 4th, 2024. The holidays were over. The decorations on my street were coming down, and I was sitting at my kitchen table, reading a letter that accused me of being a monster. The law firm was called Patterson and Associates. Phoenix address. The letterhead was fancy. The language was fancier. Pursuant to our client's claims of elder financial abuse, allegations of coercion and undue influence. Demand for immediate withdrawal of the unlawfully filed lien. Request for emergency evaluation regarding fitness for grandparent visitation. 12 pages of threats dressed up in legal words. 12 pages designed to make an old man feel small and scared. I read every word. Then I called Margaret. I got their letter, I said. So did I. They copied me on it. Her voice was calm, steady as a surgeon about to operate. What do you want to do? I want to bury them. She almost laughed. Then let's get to work. Margaret had been preparing for this moment since December. She'd organized everything Yolanda found, everything Carl told me, everything the county records revealed. Now it was time to use it. Our response was 3 pages. No fancy language, no legal padding, just facts, laid out in order, each one more damaging than the last. Page 1. The original private mortgage agreement, signed by Derek in 2019. His signature, his initials on every page. Proof that he understood the arrangement from day one. Page 2. 4 years of payment records. Bank statements showing Derek's monthly transfers. Every payment was voluntary. Every payment was documented. No coercion, no confusion. Just a son paying his father back until he decided he'd rather wait for me to die. Page 3. The evidence. The emails where Megan wrote about waiting him out. Carl's witness statement about Derek calling me senile. The fraudulent lender application where Derek claimed to be the sole owner. The building access logs proving their so-called witnesses couldn't have been where they said they were. And at the bottom of page 3, one sentence. We welcome the opportunity to present this evidence in open court. Margaret called me before she sent it. Harold, once this goes out, there's no going back. They'll either fold or fight harder. Are you ready for that? I looked at the kitchen clock. Same clock, same tick, same steady rhythm. I've been ready since Christmas morning. The response went out on January 5th. Derek thought he could bury me in paperwork. He forgot who raised him. I spent 40 years sorting mail, tracking packages, following paper trails. I knew how to find things people wanted to hide. I knew how to organize chaos into order. This was my territory. And Derek had just walked into it. Derek's lawyers thought they could intimidate a 74-year-old man into silence. They didn't know I had spent a lifetime mastering one skill, following the trail until the truth came out. If you've ever been underestimated because of your age, this moment is for you. Subscribe now. The next chapter is when everything changes. By January 12th, Patterson and Associates had gone quiet. No follow-up letter, no phone calls, no threats. Margaret said, that was a good sign. They're regrouping. They didn't expect you to hit back this hard. I waited. Patience is something you learn when you spend 40 years delivering mail. You learn that everything arrives eventually. Good news, bad news, bills and birthday cards, you just have to wait. On January 14th, my phone rang. Not a lawyer this time, Derek. Dad, I'm coming to Columbus. Why? Because we need to talk, face to face. I thought about saying no. Thought about telling him to put it in writing, let the lawyers handle it. But something in his voice stopped me. Something that sounded almost human. When? Tomorrow, I'll be here. The response went out on January 5th. By January 12th, Derek's lawyer had gone quiet. But Derek himself? He did something I never expected. He got on a plane to Columbus. Derek was coming to Ohio. Face to face. Father and son. What do you think he wanted to apologize? Or to make one last play? Drop face to face in the comments. He stood on my porch in a coat I'd bought him 3 Christmases ago. His eyes were red, his hands were shaking. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw the boy I raised. January 15th. Gray sky. Cold wind. The kind of Ohio winter day that makes you want to stay inside. But there was Derek, standing on my front steps like a stranger asking for directions. I opened the door and looked at him. Really looked. He'd lost weight. His face was thinner. Dark circles under his eyes. "Come in," I said. We sat in the kitchen. Same table where I'd eaten breakfast for 30 years. Same chairs Eleanor picked out at a garage sale in 1998. Same clock ticking on the wall. Derek didn't speak right away. He just sat there, staring at his hands. I waited. I'd learned how to wait. Finally, he looked up. "Dad, I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth." That would be new. He flinched. But he didn't argue. "Megan pushed me into this." The words came out fast, like he'd been rehearsing them on the plane. It was her idea. The emails, the loan application, all of it. "I didn't want to cut you out, I swear." "But you did." "I know. I know I did." He ran his hands through his hair. "The business failed, Dad. The one I started after college. My partner took everything. I was in debt. Real debt. The kind that keeps you up at night. You never told me. I was ashamed. You'd already given me so much. The house, the money, everything. I couldn't ask for more. So instead, you planned to take it after I was dead." Derek's face crumpled. For a second, I thought he was going to cry. "That was Megan's idea," she said. "If we could just get the house in our name, we could refinance. Pull out equity. Pay off the debts. Start over. And you went along with it." I didn't know what else to do. I let the silence stretch. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. "You could have told me the truth, Derek. I would have helped you. I've always helped you. You always loved the idea of helping more than actually being part of our lives." His voice turned bitter. "You gave us money, but you never showed up." That one hurt. I felt it like a punch to the chest. "I tried to show up, Derek. You told me not to come for Christmas." He looked away, couldn't meet my eyes. "I didn't know how to face you. After everything we'd planned, after what Megan said in those emails, I couldn't look at you and pretend everything was fine. So you pushed me away instead." "Yes." Another silence. Longer this time. "Dad, I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I can't take back what I did. But I need you to know. I'm sorry." I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him everything would be okay, that we could go back to the way things were. But Eleanor's voice came back one more time, soft but firm, the way she always was when she was right. "Love him enough to let him feel the weight of what he's done, Harold. That's how boys become men." "What do I have to do to fix this?" Derek asked. "You can't fix it," I said. "But you can start over. Here's what's going to happen." I laid out the terms, every single one. Derek would sign a formal acknowledgement of the debt. No more pretending it didn't exist. The house would be sold. I'd hire the real estate agent, handle the paperwork, manage the process. After the $211,000 balance was recovered, any remaining equity would go to Derek and the children. I would establish education trusts for Emma and James, but neither Derek nor Megan would have access. Not now, not ever. And there would be no prosecution for the fraudulent lender application if Derek cooperated fully. Derek sat with those terms for a long time. The clock ticked. The wind rattled the windows. Finally, he asked one question. "Will I ever see you again?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know yet. Derek sat with those terms for a long time. Then he asked one question. "Will I ever see you again?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know yet. I offered a path forward, but it required Derek to give up the house and admit everything. Would you have accepted those terms? Or fought to the end? Tell me below. Derek signed the papers on a Tuesday morning. His hand was steady. His voice was not. January 22nd, Phoenix, Arizona. Margaret Chen's office. I flew out the day before, stayed at a hotel near the airport, Didn't sleep much. Spent most of the night looking at old photos on my phone. Derek at his high school graduation, Derek holding baby Emma, Derek and me at his wedding, both of us in rented tuxedos, smiling like we had the whole world figured out. By morning, I was ready. Margaret's office felt different this time. Smaller, maybe, or maybe I just felt bigger. Derek arrived first. Alone. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were hollow. Megan came 20 minutes later. Different entrance, different elevator. They weren't speaking to each other, Margaret told me later. We gathered in the conference room. Glass table, leather chairs, Phoenix sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of room where families come apart. Margaret had the documents spread out in neat stacks, each one labeled, each one ready. "We'll go through these one at a time," she said. "Take as long as you need." Derek didn't need long. He signed the first document, the acknowledgement of debt, without hesitating. His pen scratched across the paper. His hand was steady. But when he looked up, his eyes were wet. "This is the right thing to do," he said. To me or to himself, I couldn't tell. The second document, consent to sale of the property, Derek signed. The third, withdrawal of all legal claims against Harold Whitmore, Derek signed. The fourth, agreement not to contest the deed or challenge my mental competency, Derek signed. Then it was Megan's turn. She'd been sitting in the corner the whole time, silent. Her face was stone, her arms were crossed. Margaret slid the documents across the table. "Mrs. Whitmore, your signature is required on these 4 documents." Megan didn't move. She just stared at the papers like they were poisonous. "And if I don't sign?" Margaret's voice stayed calm, professional. "Then we proceed to litigation. Discovery will be extensive. The emails will become public record, so will the fraudulent lender application, and the building access logs." She paused. "Your choice." Megan looked at Derek. He looked away. She looked at me. I didn't blink. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The air conditioning hummed. The sun blazed through the windows. Then Megan picked up the pen and signed. Each document, each page. Her signature was sharp, angry, but it was there. When she finished, she stood up and walked out without a word. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. The door swung shut behind her. Derek stayed. "Dad." His voice was hoarse. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know, I'm sorry." I looked at my son, the boy I raised, the man I didn't recognize anymore. "I hear you, Derek." I didn't say, "I forgive you." I wasn't there yet. Maybe I'd never be. He nodded, like he understood. Like he knew he'd lost something that might never come back. As they left, I sat alone in that conference room. Margaret was in her office, making copies of everything. I watched my son sign away the house I bought him. I watched my daughter-in-law swallow her pride like broken glass. And I felt something I hadn't expected. Grief. Not for the money, not for the house. For the family we could have been. The papers were signed. The house was going up for sale. But this story isn't about revenge. It's about something harder. Knowing when to protect yourself. Even from the people you love. If you've ever had to draw a line with family, subscribe. The ending of this story is going to stay with you. The house sold in March for $340,000. After the balance was recovered, $129,000 remained. I could have kept it. I could have called it interest on 4 years of betrayal. But I had another plan. One that would ensure my grandchildren remembered who their grandfather really was. I had the money. I had every right to keep it. But I didn't. What do you think I did with it? Drop legacy, if you think you know. The trust documents had 2 names on them. Emma Whitmore, age 9. James Whitmore, age 6. Their parents couldn't touch a penny. March 2024. Columbus, Ohio. Spring was coming. You could feel it in the air. The snow was melting. The birds were coming back. I spent most of that month working with a new attorney. Not Margaret this time. An estate specialist named Robert Haynes. Gray hair, soft voice, the kind of man who's seen every family secret there is. "What do you want to accomplish here, Mr. Whitmore?" he asked at our first meeting. "I want to protect my grandchildren. From everything. Including their parents." He nodded like this was the most normal thing in the world. Maybe it was, in his line of work. The $129,000 surplus from the house sale went directly into irrevocable education trusts, one for Emma, one for James. The terms were simple. Funds could only be used for education, healthcare, and approved living expenses after age 21. Derek and Megan were explicitly excluded as trustees or beneficiaries. They couldn't touch the money, couldn't borrow against it, couldn't even ask questions about it. "This is ironclad," Robert told me. "Even if they tried to challenge it in court, they'd lose." Good, that's what I wanted. But the money wasn't enough. I wanted to give my grandchildren something else, something that would last longer than any bank account. I wrote them each a letter. 2 pages. Simple words. The kind of words a grandfather says to the grandchildren he might not see grow up. Emma's letter started, "Dear Emma, by the time you read this, you'll be 18 years old. A young woman with her whole life ahead of her. I want you to know something important about your grandfather." James's letter started, "Dear James, you probably don't remember me very well. You were only 6 the last time we saw each other, but I remember everything about you." I told them the truth. Not all of it. Some things are too heavy for a young person to carry, but enough. I told them I loved them. I told them I made mistakes. I told them their father made mistakes too. And I told them this: family isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up, even when it's hard. I hope you'll remember that. Robert sealed the letters and locked them in a safety deposit box. They'd be delivered when Emma and James turned 18. By then, they'd be old enough to understand. A week later, I drove to the cemetery. It was the first time I'd visited Eleanor since the ordeal began. I'd been too angry, too hurt, too focused on the fight. But now the fight was over, and I needed to talk to my wife. Her gravestone was simple: gray granite. Her name, her dates, a line we'd picked out together. Before she passed. Beloved wife, mother, and friend. I stood there for a long time. The wind was cool. The grass was just starting to turn green. "I did it, Eleanor," I said out loud. "I protected what was ours. I stood up for myself, just like you always told me to." The wind picked up. The branches above me swayed. I don't know if I did everything right. Maybe I was too hard on Derek. Maybe I should have forgiven him sooner. But I couldn't let them erase me. I couldn't let them wait me out. A cardinal landed on a branch nearby, red against the gray sky. Eleanor's favorite bird. I smiled. "I miss you," I said. "Every day, I miss you." The cardinal chirped once and flew away. I watched it disappear into the trees. I thought about revenge. I thought about cutting Derek out completely, letting him struggle, letting him feel what it's like to be abandoned by someone who should love you. But that's not who Eleanor raised me to be, and it's not who I want my grandchildren to remember. I thought the story was over. The house was sold, the trusts were funded. Derek and I hadn't spoken in weeks. And then, on the first day of April, a letter arrived. No return address. Just my name, handwritten. And inside a photograph I hadn't seen in 30 years. A letter with no return address. A photograph from 30 years ago. What do you think I found? Drop letter if you're ready for the final chapter. The photograph was from Derek's 5th birthday. He was sitting on my shoulders, cake frosting on his cheek, laughing like the world was made of joy. I hadn't seen that boy in a long time. April 1st. Morning light through my kitchen window. Coffee getting cold on the table. I held the photograph in my hands. The edges were soft with age. The colors had faded a little. But I remembered that day like it was yesterday. We'd thrown Derek a party in the backyard. Nothing fancy. Hot dogs, birthday cake, a few kids from the neighborhood. Eleanor had baked the cake herself. Chocolate with vanilla frosting. Derek's favorite. In the photo, he's on my shoulders. His little hands are gripping my forehead. There's frosting on his cheek and chocolate on his shirt. And he's laughing. Really laughing. The kind of laugh that makes everyone around you smile. I don't remember who took the picture. Probably Eleanor. She was always the one with the camera. The envelope had no return address. Just my name, written in handwriting I recognized. Derek's handwriting. Inside, along with the photo, was a single piece of paper. 6 words. "I want to earn this back." I sat with that letter for a long time. Read it over and over. Tried to figure out what I felt. Part of me wanted to call Derek right then. Tell him to come over. Start rebuilding. But another part, the part that remembered the emails, the lies, the Christmas phone call, wasn't ready yet. I didn't respond that day, or the next day, or the day after that. But I didn't throw the letter away either. April turned warm. The trees Eleanor planted in our backyard, 3 maples and a cherry, started to bloom. The neighborhood came back to life. Kids riding bikes, dogs barking, neighbors waving. One morning, I took my coffee out to the front porch, something I hadn't done since Eleanor died. The air was cool and clean. The sky was blue. Spring was really here. I sat in the old wooden chair, the one Eleanor said was too rickety to keep, and watched the street wake up. A woman walked by with a golden retriever. A school bus stopped at the corner, picked up 2 kids, drove away. An old man 3 houses down was raking leaves that had blown into his yard over the winter. Normal life, going on the way it always does. I thought about Eleanor, about Derek, about Emma and James. I thought about the 40 years I spent delivering mail, the 30 years I spent in this house, the 74 years I spent becoming the man I am. Eleanor used to say, the strongest thing a man can do is let go of what's killing him and hold on to what's keeping him alive. I used to think strength meant holding on. Holding on to the house, to the money, to the anger. But maybe she was right. Maybe strength is something different. I don't know if I'll ever trust Derek the way I did before. I don't know if we'll share another Christmas. I don't know if Megan and I will ever exchange another word. But I know this. I didn't let them erase me. I didn't let them wait me out. I stood up for myself when everyone expected me to lie down. And when my grandchildren are old enough to understand, they'll know their grandfather stood for something. My story didn't end with revenge. It ended with a choice, to protect what mattered without losing who I was. If you've ever had to fight for your own dignity, if you've ever had to teach someone that love doesn't mean letting them destroy you, this story was for you. Subscribe to this channel, because the next story might be the one that changes how you see your own life. And if you won't subscribe, tell me why in the comments. I read every single one. I folded the photograph and put it in my wallet, right next to the one of Eleanor. 2 faces I loved. 2 reminders of who I'm still becoming. The spring air was cool and clean. The street was quiet. Birds sang in the trees Eleanor planted decades ago. And Harold Whitmore, 74 years old, retired postal supervisor, father, grandfather, wounded lion, finally felt like he could breathe again. Thanks for watching. If my journey moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that make you feel, think, and maybe even heal a little. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done differently? And remember, the strongest love doesn't rescue you from your life. It gives you the courage to stand up for yourself, even when it hurts. Drop "breathe" in the comments if you made it to the end. And tell me, what's the one line from my story you'll carry with you?